The Anvil Crucible is a planned repair ship in Star Citizen, designed around the idea of fixing up ships in various states of disrepair and getting them back into action. It's one of the older and more unusual designs, but as Star Citizen matures and the horizon of new gameplay gets steadily closer, the Crucible becomes an increasingly interesting concept. I'm Forrester, and welcome to the Drydock, a series which delves deeper into the ships of Star Citizen. This video will explore the background behind the Crucible both in and out of game, then take a look at some of the attributes and statistics of the ship, before considering how that might all translate into gameplay. There are timestamps in the video description, although if you're interested in the Crucible, you might prefer to watch this one all the way through. And whilst this channel usually focuses on what's currently in-game, necessarily this video will navigate the treacherous space that is speculation territory. Whilst every effort has been made to approach this video accurately, sometimes information is sparse and much is subject to change as time goes along, so please treat the content with a pinch of salt and not as a definitive promise as to what will happen. All of that said, let's dive into the background of the Crucible. The Anvil Crucible was first announced in November 2015, including a Wandering Workshop article and a Q&A on the Star Citizen website. A couple of months later, in early 2016, a work-in-progress Crucible article was released which included a little history about the development at that time. Since then, however, news of the Crucible has been fairly quiet. Although there has been a long time since first announced, there's limited information available about the Crucible in-game. The Galactopedia page does note that the Crucible was originally developed for the UEE Navy, where it is still deployed currently. The Crucible debuted at $350 back in 2015, and that price hasn't changed since. The stated purpose for the Crucible is as a heavy repair ship, capable of fixing up ships ranging from small fighters to supporting the largest of ships. One description explains that the Crucible operates as a dry dock for small ships or as scaffolding for larger ships to facilitate repair operations. The repair tasks are centered around repair arms and deployable drones. Based on current information, the Crucible would have a total length of 90 meters, a total width or beam of 50 meters, and a total height or depth of 20 meters. The total mass of the Crucible would be around 3,650 metric tons. By way of components, the current plans would suggest that power would be provided by a large power plant, with cooling provided by 2 large coolers. Additionally, the ship would carry a large radar, supported by 2 small-sized and 1 medium-sized computer. Defensively, the Crucible would carry 2 large shield generators. The specifications also list 2 large fuel tanks, 2 large hydrogen fuel intakes, and a large-sized quantum fuel tank. Both the quantum drive and jump drive are listed as large-sized. In terms of propulsion, the specifications list 2 retro thrusters, 4 main thrusters, 4 VTOL thrusters, and 26 fixed maneuvering thrusters located around the ship. By way of armament, the current specifications for the Crucible suggest a very lightly armed ship, with only 1 manned turret carrying 2 size 4 weapons. Given that the Crucible is about fixing up other ships, however, it somewhat makes sense that it doesn't have to be the most heavily armed, especially with those 2 large shield generators providing some protection. The crew specifications for the Crucible note a minimum crew of 3 to a maximum crew of 8. The Q&A does mention that the ship could potentially be operated by a solo pilot, which makes the minimum requirement on the specifications page a little dubious. Indeed, one of the reasons for the rotating bridge is to aid a single player, although the Q&A also suggests that reducing the crew count would increase repair time substantially. Realistically, 1 to 3 players may well be the limit for the sort of gameplay options that may become available, covering off repair mechanics, drones, and potentially a turret gunner. By way of amenities aboard, there are all of the usual habitation facilities for supporting a crew, as well as a cargo storage area supposedly able to hold around 230 SCUs of cargo. It's probably important to note here that this may be needed to store repair materials aboard, which will be gradually spent as repairs take place. And those repair facilities are the main feature of the Crucible. Visually, the central Scarab module is immediately obvious, with two large arms creating a sheltered space for repairs of smaller ships to take place. The Scarab doors can close in a clamshell type arrangement, creating essentially a floating dry dock to aid repairs, able to fit ships of single-seater fighter size. Alternatively, the design suggests that it may be possible to deposit that Scarab in space, although it's not immediately clear what the advantage of doing so might be. The repair capabilities of the Crucible seem to be structured around mobile drones and the repair arms attached to the ship. The primary use case for the Crucible is clearly going to be repair functionality. The ability to fly in and fix a ship up, whether that's to be almost as good as new or just enough to make it back to a dedicated repair facility depending on the situation. As Death of a Spaceman mechanics mature in-game and ship reclaim timers potentially increase, this sort of role, especially in supporting some of the larger ships, could be a valuable resource. It's anticipated that there may be some gameplay mechanics attached, perhaps similar to some of the salvage and mining loops that exist now, but also potentially with some roles in swapping and managing components. There's significant crossover between salvage and repair mechanics, and so there's some hint that there may be some limited salvage functions that the Crucible could perform. Whether that's as simple as stripping weapons or components from derelict hulls, or anything more, time will tell. And finally, there's the potential to use the Crucible as a small-scale ship transport for one, perhaps. The Scarab Bay can close up, and a ship inside would travel with the Crucible. Whilst clearly not as optimal as a dedicated hauler such as the Liberator, that's a potentially interesting use case for a Crucible. So, the Crucible seems to be more designed around providing repairs in more peaceful situations. The two large shield generators are not to be sniffed at, but the conspicuous lack of a suite of weaponry suggests that the Crucible is best not to stick around unescorted in a combat situation for any length of time. Accordingly, it may end up being more of a high-value asset to be protected in many a fleet scenario. That said, clearly, where repairs are needed, damage has taken place, so the Crucible may often be straddling risky situations, and there may be some value in some unexpected repairs in such situations. For those who know their naval history, the carrier battles of the Coral Sea and Midway in the Pacific Theatre may be familiar. One of the contributing factors to the success of the US Navy at Midway was the unexpected presence of the USS Yorktown, which had been badly damaged at the Battle of the Coral Sea. Estimates were that the ship would take 2 weeks to repair, but in an incredible feat of human effort, she was brought back out to sea within 3 days. It's this unexpected repair where the Crucible may be able to make key strategic or tactical differences to larger fleets, either to help a strategic asset limp back for some repairs, or even for a field patch-up duty between attack waves, resulting in the enemy underestimating the strength of the remaining force. As somebody who is extremely excited about engineering and repair gameplay in Star Citizen, somebody who dreams of being the chief engineer on a capital ship in-game, it's easy to see why the Crucible would be so appealing to many a player. But I'm aware that passion may put me at risk of going on for too long about this ship, so we'll wrap it up there and pass over to you to share your thoughts in the video comments. If you're not yet subscribed to the channel, you might like to do that so that you can get the heads up for new videos on the channel, as well as fixing up the like button if you like heavily narrated slideshows talking about fictional spaceships. Otherwise, and as always, thank you for watching.